So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about Reece-Mogg, the Brexit man without a Brexit plan. And I know we've spoken about Reece-Mogg a lot. That's only because his new role makes him really relevant in this, in the fact that he was a man who advocated so much for Brexit and has been given a role to implement the benefits of Brexit and has so far done nothing. So, to the amazement of most of Rees-Mogg, Jacob Rees-Mogg, our newly appointed Minister for Brexit Opportunities, has asked Sun readers to write in with suggestions for Brexit opportunities. More exactly, he's asking which bits of petty EU legislation should be scrapped. Now, I know we've spoken about some of this stuff before, but they do, in this article, they do talk about his mentions and essentially what people have asked for. So I often ask this same question to those wanting to leave the EU. My everlasting memory from those days is talking to a sweet elderly lady who came towards me with her shopping trolley. We discussed EU membership for a while. Then I asked which EU rule she wanted to scrap. She said, well, if you're going to ask me clever questions like that, you can F off, she answered. Not very a clever question, is it? It's not really a clever question. What are you going to get rid of? And then she was like, get lost. She swore at him. That's just sad, isn't it? I didn't know the answer, she didn't know the answer, and now it seems Mogg hasn't got a clue either. You know, he talked about cheap shoes for peasants and all this other stuff. Yeah, it's just sad, isn't it? Mogg must have some clue what he wanted to take back control of. There's a very interesting tweet on how few laws from the EU were forced upon us. From 96 to 2014, only 72 were imposed on us by the EU, and the UK still had a veto over some of this, over a lot of this stuff, really. For example, in 97, the UK objected to transportation companies from outside the EU being able to carry passengers between destinations within the EU without having an EU office. I mean, that's a really strange one. Transportation companies from outside the EU, so say Turkey, being able to carry passengers between EU members without having an EU office. So essentially, that would impact third countries, which is ironic considering we are now a third country, and this rule would have impacted us. It's very strange. He says, countrymen, lend me your thoughts. Like Goku using the spirit bomb, Rees-Mogg is asking for everyone else's energy. It seems Mogg wants builders, shopkeepers, plumbers or lorry drivers to tell him how to get Brexit done. He's also asked other businesses to help him as well. It obviously isn't all over. Keeping with football theme, asking Sun readers suggests he's not too interested in ideas from Liverpool after the Liverpool's disastrous coverage of Hillsborough, where they maligned sort of the people and the victims in that situation instead of who was to blame, which I believe were the police. I suspect most of the calls will be for him to cut all the red tape that has been caused by leaving the EU, which is hilarious because, we spoke, depending on when this goes out, we've spoken about how us implementing the UK CA mark will actually make way more red tape for people to import in EU products into the UK. Why? Because there's another regulator the importers have to jump over, which in terms of small quantities it's not worth it. Getting regulatory approval can be expensive for companies, and why would they do it? We've spoken specifically about that in a different article. Even his predecessor Frost has called for border checks on goods coming into the UK from July to be cancelled, so that would be the physical inspections. But the problem with that is if you do that for the EU, you'll have to do that for other WTO members as well because of most favourable nations. Brexit has caused more paperwork and red tape, not less, which is true. Perhaps the cause will be to reduce shortages and price increases caused by Brexit. After all, as members, the regulations we had to follow and help make were usually beneficial for consumers rather than businesses, and the UK played an instrumental role in actually forming those legislations. There are plenty of examples such as no fees for credit card transactions, which helps consumers, mobile roaming, so they tried to get rid of roaming charges, which they did for the most part, which again helps UK consumers. Compensation for air travel delays, which if you take certain airlines you're going to need, which might soon get watered down. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe certain companies are donating for Tory party. I don't know. What consumer wants to water down the safety standard? Which consumer wants to water down the safety standards to which we've all grown accustomed? it might help companies' profit margins but at the expense of the consumer. And again, it'll impact other companies. If you manufacture small components to sell it on to people to put into bigger products, if your small components aren't up to spec, you could cause massive problems for the other companies. That's why you have things like the UK CA mark. So it's just comical, like he's, deregulating and then, hurting consumers and other businesses. It doesn't make sense. After reading through hundreds of questions asking him why did you move your company to Ireland, which his company I believe is headquartered in Ireland, he's going to say he didn't make that decision. It's very strange though, don't you think? Along with some other rude replies and countless tales of problems caused by Brexit, unsurprisingly few ideas have surfaced. So this writer has actually looked through so many of these replies, and it's great. One called for the scrapping of mobile roaming for EU and bloody compensation for air travel. So because UK-based companies have started implementing roaming charges, they want the British government to put roaming charges on the EU citizens coming to the UK, but the problem is it's the mobile carrier that does that, and bloody compensation for air travel. I mean, who, as the writer points out, surely this suggestion must have come from a major shareholder in mobile telecoms and the air industry. And just how can we scrap anything for EU citizens, which is true? How are we supposed to stop that for them? It doesn't make sense. There's more. Someone else wants to get rid of that green nonsense, which Tories always endlessly go on about, like, oh, we need to cut regulations for green energy. That's the real problem. Me. Although they'd obviously forgotten what we hosted COP26 a few months ago. It was a cop out, but sure. Although sometimes it looks like the government has also forgotten its promises on climate change. Because we're not moving towards net zero, not really. There was also calls for half-naked women to be brought back to page 3 of the Sun, although he admitted he admitted to not really understanding if this was the EU who banned the practice. It wasn't. It was the Sun because it kept bringing them bad publicity. I'm assuming because people couldn't stop talking about it. So yeah, there was that. So definitely not the EU who did that, because we were an EU member when that stuff was still going on. The best idea wasn't about scrapping red tape but expanding it, focusing on the EU rule on bendy bananas. As most of us know, the stories about the bendy bananas was actually one of Johnson's made up stories because he wanted to sell papers and he didn't want to do research. Yet there is a rule that bananas should not be abnormally bent, but this only applies to grade 1 bananas and yet is aimed at protecting consumers. So I'm assuming grade 1 bananas are the ones you'd pay a lot more money for, but I've never seen a grade 1 banana, so... The tweeter wondered if the abnormally bent rule could be expanded to include banning abnormally bent government ministers. Food for thought. Oh, that's funny, isn't it? That's the best suggestion, and that's a joke suggestion. So they've not come up with much, have they? Being a linguist, my eye was caught by a tweet from Michael Fifield, which translated the call for opportunities. So the tweet goes like this. Mogg's tweet goes like this, the translation anyways. I haven't the foggiest idea why we Brexited, other than to avoid having to implement new EU tax evasion laws, which would directly affected me and my wealthy chums. But come on, pros, help me find something to add to blue passports and crowns on beer glasses, which we know those things aren't even true, because even the Express now admits the crowns on beer glasses weren't banned by the EU, and any Croatian will tell you they have blue passports, and their passports last longer than the UK ones, which I'm guessing that means the renewal phase is longer, which is cool because passports be expensive. Point being is that not all EU member states have the red passports, and they never had to. So yeah, that's a bit strange, wasn't it? So no real benefits so far. If you found any, let me know. But so far, from what I've heard, we can change the regulations on hairdryers and other things to make them use up more power, which, okay, your kettle's going to boil 10 seconds quicker or whatever. Like, who cares? Like, honestly. Anyways, if you have anything you want to send to Rees-Mogg, you can email him. His email is jacob.rees-mogg, one word there, Rees-Mogg, .mp@parliament.uk, and I'll leave his email in the description in case you want to email him, and if you've got any suggestions for him. This article's really well done from the Central Bylines. It's a really good article because it shows you that Rees-Mogg is the Brexit man without a Brexit plan, and that he's going to constantly ask other people to do his homework. Why? Because he can't do it. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.